Okay, hi everyone and welcome to our YouTube channel Career Talk. Friends, my name is Sunil Sharma and I'm the host of this channel. So if you are someone who loves learning new things and staying up to date with the latest trends and development as a Scrum Master, then you are in the right place. On our channel, we will bringing you interviews with experts along with educational content and tips on how to succeed as a Scrum Master. So if you are ready to join us on this journey of continuous learning and growth, hit that subscribe button and let's get started. So let's welcome today's guest, Priyanka Khurana. She cracked 10 interviews as a Scrum Master, and we are covering all those questions which were asked during those interviews. Friends, this is our sixth session with Priyanka. So if you've not seen previous 5 sessions, please watch them as well. I will put link of all those 5 sessions in the description box. So you just go and watch those sessions as well. So till now, we have covered close to 50 to 60 Scrum Master interview questions. So let's begin and welcome one more time, Priyanka. Thank you.
Sunan. Thank you, Sunan, for calling me again to the session. And I'm really happy that people are liking the content and people are really grateful for the channel as it is providing a lot of valuable insights to the people who are aspiring Scrum Masters or want to increase their knowledge as a Scrum Master or Agile coach. So yeah, thank you again for calling me.
Okay. Thanks, Priyanka. So if you allow, shall we start?
Yes, Sunil, definitely.
Okay. So very first question is on the retro technique, but this is a little bit different. So if as a Scrum Master, if you have to tell us one retro technique which is more efficient for a team members who are not introverts or who are not speaking much. So what is your take? Like, you want to specify something?
Sure, I think that's an interesting question. Retrospective is, as we all know, it's one of the Scrum ceremony, and it's one of the event that is done on the very last day of the sprint. And the purpose of this meeting is to collaborate with the team, Scrum team, to understand how we performed during the sprint. What is it that we can work upon to improve our sprint going further? So it's basically inspecting and adapting our processes and our individuals as a team so that going forward, we can add some improvements and make our teams more self-sufficient. And when we talk about people not talking in retrospective, introverts are basically the people who speak really less or people who are more observant, who understand more, listen more, but they really take time to open up in bigger groups. So, and I think there are many retrospective techniques that we can use with the teams who are still forming, or we can have some different techniques for teams who are matured and self-organizing. But I think let me talk about one of the technique that I have used in my teams, in one of my teams, where I see a few people who are like new joiners, freshers, developers, and speaking really less. So they were listening more and sometimes get influenced by senior people in the team. So I have used one of the Liberty structure, which says, which is 1, 2, 4, all, wherein you put up a question in your retrospective, like maybe one of the example could be, what are the opportunities areas that you see for our team in the coming year? So this could be one of the questions. And 1 to 4, all techniques talk about when you have this question in front of the team, giving individual a few minutes, like 2 minutes time to think through the question and write down their points. We can use some virtual tools like Miro board, or we can have fun retrospective where we can have this question put up. We have many ways where we can have these retrospectives. And then when everybody has written down their thought about this question, then creating breakout rooms where we can have 2 people, then a group of 2 people. So if you have a team of 8 members, there'll be 4 teams and each team have 2 members. They'll be exchanging their thoughts about that same question. They'll be putting up their perspective and then they'll be talking and coming to a final conclusion as what are the opportunities they see as a team. for the next year. Then again, breaking them into a bigger team. So a group of 4 people now. So 2 teams of 4 people. Earlier, there were 2 people in each team. Now there are 4 people in one team and there are 2 teams. Now the 4 are exchanging their thoughts and coming out to some pointers, which they together see as a growth or a opportunity for their team. And then coming together as one group and giving them a dedicated time, like 10 minutes to now exchange their ideas as a bigger group. So in this way, everybody gets equal opportunity to think through what they feel about, and then they are discussing it in smaller group and then a little bigger group and then with the entire team. So this gets them an opportunity to talk, to express their views. And in this way, you get views from everybody in the team. I think that's one of the interesting technique that I see, and I have used it in my team. It worked for me. Yeah, so I think that's one of the technique that we can use for introverts. There could be other techniques that we can also use, like when we are using, for example, any Miro board, and you are using say technique mad sad glad, so everybody is putting their questions, everybody is putting their thoughts about a particular question, or what they feel mad about in the sprint, or what is it that make them sad during the sprint. And you notice that somebody has not given any pointers, or people are speaking but there is a particular person who is not speaking them, then particularly maybe touching that, uh, if you would like to add your thoughts to asking directly to the person who has not pointed out anything. So that is also something that can help. But this one, liberty structure that I talked about, 1 to 4 all, is something I feel will work, because people are writing down their thoughts and then they are talking about it in a smaller group. So that is really helpful. I think that's my view about it.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot, Priyanka.
Sure.
Okay, so next one is also interesting. So let's assume that you are, I mean, I'm sure like you are from a technical background, but let's say your team is estimating more efforts for a simple task.
Mhm.
So what do you do as a Scrum Master? Would you go and help them, or what is your take on that part?
Okay, so let me just try to understand the question clearly. Is that my Scrum team is estimating more efforts or story points for a particular task? Is this the question
So
all about?
yes, yeah.
Okay. So if we talk about agile project management, and whenever we are working, say, in a Scrum team, we are estimating, the purpose of this is to get the uh, maximum or optimum benefit out of the team, and they are performing at their optimum level, and there is a balance of workload within the team. I think that's the basic idea of estimation. In agile, we generally use, majority of the teams use planning poker or agile poker for estimation, which involves story pointing, where we give story points to each user story to determine how much effort will it take to deliver, and if we are able to deliver within a sprint. So if our sprint is, say, 2-week duration and we are estimating too high, then in that case, as a Scrum Master, questioning them that can we slice it further and make it a smaller user story, so that we can be sure that it can be delivered within a sprint. But I think the question talks more about if they are intentionally overestimating some of the work. I think what I would do, even if I am a technical or a non-technical Scrum Master, sometimes there are non-technical Scrum Masters who really do not understand um, like the technical stuff the team is talking about. So there is not too much that you can add uh, in terms of why do you think it will take a 5-story point or a 8-story point. But if you are working with a team for like a good amount of time, Say, for example, you're working with them for a quarter now or 2 quarters now or more than that, then in that case, even if you do not understand the technical stuff, you get some understanding about what the story is talking about, what is it that they want to achieve. And since you are closely working with the team, uh, you might have an idea of that team might have worked a similar kind of story in the past. So taking that as reference could also help. I think I can take an example of what I do. So whenever we have a quarter ends, I take out all the user stories that the team has worked upon during the sprint, and then having a estimation workshop with the team and opening up each story, talking with the team that, hey, you estimated it as 3-story pointer. That do you still feel that it's a 3-story pointer, or going forward, if you get similar kind of work, would you estimate it as 2 or 5? Now that you have worked on the story, you have more clarity about what was the kind of effort required. So you can tell a little better now. So in this way, doing the same thing with each of the story, where people then rethink about it and say that, yeah, now I think the team is little more matured in estimation, little more matured in technical capability. So we can now take 2-story points for this 3-story pointers. And then we also decide that this can be used as a reference story going forward. So we maintain that in our Confluence page, and teams use that as reference in future. So if I see that team is taking more story points, then I always refer that page and see that, hey, we worked on a similar kind of story. At that time, you estimated as 3-story pointers, but now you are calling it as 5-story pointers. Why do you see? Then they are in a situation to explain me why they think it's 5. Is there more effort involved or not? Also, apart from that, since there are many developers and in the team, and if they are giving different story points to a particular story, then and asking for their opinion, why do you think it's a 3-story point for one person, while also checking with the other who has given 8-story points. So understanding their perspective and see who is able to influence. Maybe the person who has given 8-story pointers couldn't have thought of a solution which a senior person thought, and he came out with a 3-story pointer for the exact same story. Because when we are estimating, we consider following factors like complexity of the work, the risks and dependencies involved, the uncertainties involved. So sometimes maybe a person couldn't thought of a uh, dependency that is involved with other team. So those kind of factors, when they talk about in front of me, I get a better idea if they are estimating it right or wrong. And that's how I am able to give my viewpoint, whether they are giving it correct or not. Also, that reference user story table that we use, that also helps me as well as the team understand that, yes, they are estimating it a little better than before. They are being matured uh, sprint by sprint or quarter by quarter, and that's how we are able to improve our estimation process in the team.
Great, great. Thanks, Priyanka.
Sure.
Okay, so next one is, I think a simple one for you. How and when to create a DOR and DOD?
Okay, so DOR and DOD are the definitions that are defined in a Scrum framework, in Agile way of working. So we have a definition of ready, which is basically the entry point for a issue, may be it a user story or a defect or a technical debt, uh, anything that is a issue in our Jira board. Uh, DOR defines the entry criteria if this is a right story or a right issue to be put into a sprint. Similarly, DOD, which is definition of done, is the exit criteria, which tells me that is the story done or is the issue done to be, called as completed. So definition of ready and definition of done are basically generally defined at the beginning of a project or a product. During the initiation phases, we define certain definitions, and it really helps for new teams because they have a clarity that all of the items and definition of ready are done, and we can take it into the sprint. So it's basically a checklist, and some of the items and definition of ready that I can recall is the user story is already estimated. That's only when we can take it into a sprint, and the user story does not have any dependencies. Uh, it is small enough to be fit into a sprint. So it is fulfilling invest criteria. These are some of the checklist items. If all of these are checked, the dependencies have been removed, it has been estimated, then we can say that yes, we can take up this story within our sprint. So that's our entry criteria. And similarly, when the developers and QAs are done with the story, uh, they go through that checklist of definition of done and see if all of the items in that checklist are completed, then only they can say the story is completed. For example, some of the checklist items in our DoD could be the coding has been completed, the code has been moved to dev environment and staging environment, testing has been completed in dev and staging, all the critical test cases has been tested and they are passing. So these could be some of the criterias in our DoD. And when they all are checked, for example, the story has been developed. So some of the items have been marked as checked, but it has not been tested. It has been tested and developed. It is not yet tested in staging. So we cannot say that story is completed because there is still some work left. So this is how we define DOR and DoD, and this really helps the beginners or the teams who are starting with the new in the Scrum teams, because they exactly know what is it that they need to check before they are taking a story, or they need to call it as done before they are moving the story out of the sprint, and so that they do not see any further issues later in production. Other thing I would like to call out is that these DODs and DORs are though defined at the beginning of a sprint or project, but these are not static. We can, these are dynamic checklists. We can change them, alter them later during the development of product. Reason being, as we being more mature into development, we can see there are things we still need to consider and should be added into our DOD or DOR. So this is how I think DoD and DOR can evolve in future. So I would say these are not static, but these are dynamic ones which can be changed even late in the product development.
Great, Priyanka. Okay, so next is about spike. So first of all, what is spike and when we should use a spike? And just a follow up, do we estimate a spike? So it's all about the spike. Your thought on that, Priyanka?
Okay, so I think spike as a general meaning of a spike, as I understand, is researching on different solutions for a I think this is a software development term which came from extreme programming, the meaning of which is to identify different solutions or potential solutions for a particular problem. In terms of Agile or Scrum framework, we call a spike as a user story for which the team does not have clarity about the solution, and they spend some time researching to understand how much effort will it take to complete this functionality, or what could be the possible solutions to develop this functionality. That is how I understand spike. So I think the outcome of doing a spike is that with the research that they have done, they'll be able to find out estimations for that problem. So there is a feature that they want to develop. They do not know how this can be developed. What is the solution for that? Some of the time from the sprint is dedicated to identify how much time or how much estimation would it require to complete that work. That is called a spike story. Now, the questions is, should we estimate a spike or do not estimate it? I think there are different perspectives to look at this question. First is, since we do not know how much effort is required, since we are doing a research work, we do not know what is the complexity involved, what is it that will required, so we cannot estimate it. That's simple enough, that we do not know, and why we are doing spike is to estimate, is to define the time it will take, or the estimation it will take. So we cannot really estimate it. But then if we do not estimate it and take it into our sprint, and we are not giving any story points to a spike, then it'll impact our velocity big time. Because in Scrum, in sprints, we estimate work basis our velocity. And if we are spending some time on a spike and we are not giving any estimation, any story points to that, but we have invested time, so it'll not give an exact number or a correct number for our velocity. So I can talk about how we do in our teams, but again, there are different perspectives how people do it. In our team, we have defined a particular number, like 5 story point. Whenever there is a spike, we will give it a 5 story point, and we will spend like 2 days or 3 days dedicatedly on that sprint. There's one person who is working 3 days dedicatedly on that spike, and whatever research he has done, he or she will document, and basis that in next sprint or in future, we'll define that how we want to work on the spike. This is one of the way. Other way that I have seen in some of the teams is they do not give it any number, but they spare some of their capacity. For example, they spare 10% of their capacity each sprint to work on spikes, or if there are any defects. So that kind of stuff they want to do, they spare that capacity. So they do not calculate it in their velocity at all. They just dedicate some time. These are, I think, some of the ways that I have seen in my experience that people use to estimate or not estimate a spike. But I think from the definition or understanding, a spike is something for which you do not know the solution. And by using this story, you are trying to actually figure out how much estimate will it take to finally deliver the story.
True. So you are correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this one is again an interesting. So I'm just going to tell you one statement and you have to answer that.
Okay.
And it goes like this, that is it okay to split user story in dev and QA work? So
Okay.
that's the question.
Okay. So a user story is basically a small amount of work that delivers a value to the customer. Yeah, that's how we understand a user story. And if we are splitting a user story into dev work and QA work, this means, and for example, if we are taking just the dev work in one sprint and QA work in the next sprint, then in that case, even though we have spent some time in delivering that dev work, but ideally we have not delivered any value to the customer at the end of a sprint. So every sprint has a sprint goal attached to it. And as Agile says, the values in Agile says that we should be able to deliver something working at the end of a sprint, something valuable, tangible that can have some value for the end user. I think if we are dividing the work into dev and QA work, then we are not really delivering value. Also, whenever we are working in an Agile methodology, Scrum teams in Scrum framework are cross-functional teams. So everybody should have an understanding of all the kind of work. They should be such a team that they are able to provide end-to-end solution. So I think my understanding is a user story should not be split into dev and QA work. It should be a single story, which should be estimated in terms of complexity, dependencies, risks, and uncertainties. There should not be like that division made on dev and QA work. It should be done holistically in a single story. Yeah, maybe if you want to add some more points, Sunand, you can do so. But I think
No,
my
that's okay.
understanding
Yeah,
says it shouldn't be really divided. We
yeah.
should be able to deliver end to end within a story.
Yeah, this is a typical ND pattern which we still see in a lot of Scrum
Yeah,
teams. So
yeah,
that's why sometimes people keep on asking this question.
yeah.
Okay, great. So let's move on to the next one. What is reliability index?
Okay, reliability index. Um, as the name suggests, reliability is checking how much you can rely on a product or on a team. If I talk in terms of software development, um, in terms of relying on a product, I think reliability index is how much you can rely on the product, how much it is effective for the end user. But I think in terms of like Scrum teams or Agile that we are working, it's more in terms of defining the reliability of a team. So we have like commitment reliability for the teams, that how reliable is your team in terms of the story points they have committed. At the start of a sprint, every team commit to certain story points that bases their velocity. I think they'll be able to deliver 40 story points in a sprint. And sprint over sprint, if they are meeting that commitment, that means they have a good commitment reliability. Uh, let me take an example. In sprint one, my velocity was 40. My team committed for 40 story points, and they delivered 38 story points. So commitment reliability index would be 38 divided by 40. So it's less than, I think, 100%. Next sprint, again, the velocity is around maybe 39, considering past velocities. And now they committed for 40 story points. So it will be like 40, which they committed, divided by 39, which is their velocity. So in that case, they delivered little more than what they committed. So their reliability index was higher. So it was more than 1. So reliability, we can really rely on the team. So this is how sprint by sprint, we try to figure out their commitment reliability, which gives a good idea about how mature your team is, how they um, are they committing to the right story points? If the commitment reliability is like really going down sprint by sprint, then as a Scrum master, you should try to understand why they are committing more when they are able to deliver less. What are those pain points? What are those areas where we need improvement? So I think those are some of the retrospective items that you need to pick, that if it is going down sprint by sprint. Also, if it's going high sprint by sprint, and then also you need to figure out as a Scrum master that team committed 40 and they delivered 50. Next time also they committed less, they delivered more. Then how come they are committing less? So I think in both the situations, if it is varying a lot, then you need to figure out as a Scrum master what are the problem areas in the team, which we really need to work at. I think that's about reliability index.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So how and who decide the length of the sprint, and under which scenarios we should use 1 week sprint, and in which scenarios we should use 4 week sprint?
Okay. So as per Scrum framework, we can have a sprint length from 1 to 4 weeks. It can be a 1 week or 2 week or 3 week or 4 week sprint. That's the general definition given in the Scrum guide. However, I have seen in my experience, majority of the teams have either a 2 week sprint or a 3 week sprint. That is considered the most ideal. Uh, Now, the question here is how and who decides the length of a sprint? I think the length of a sprint is defined or decided by entire team, which includes product owner, scrum master, and the developers. Together, they talk about the kind of product that they are going to deliver, what is the complexity of that product, how much clarity they have in terms of requirement. I think these are some of the factors that could be used to determine what could be the right cadence, including the start day and end day of the sprint, as well as the duration of a sprint. But I think if the team is not able to reach to a consensus, that then as a scrum master, you should take a final call along with product owner that what is the right cadence for our sprint. If it's a very complex product and the requirements are not very clear, and then you have taken a 4-week sprint time, and then within the sprint, you are struggling to get those requirements clear, the product owner is also not very clear about requirements, then a 4-week sprint is not very ideal. In that case, you should have a 2-week or 1-week sprint, because in that case, you'll have more interactions. You'll be able to fail fast and get feedback fast from your client stakeholders. You'll be able to retrospect early. You'll be able to uh, get those demos done early. So I think these are some of the factors which you can use to decide the right length of a sprint. Also, I think sprint length is defined at the beginning. When the product development starts, we decide a particular cadence and then we stick to it. We generally do not try to change it. Because if we change it, then it disturbs the flow of the team. So if a cadence is defined, and it is also defined in Scrum Guide, that if you have decided a cadence, you should stick to it over the development of the product. I can also think of a few scenarios where we can sometime change our cadence. For example, right now we are into Christmas period and we are at the end of a year. So generally this is a freeze period when there are no releases go into production. So in these cases, generally the sprint is extended till the freeze time. For example, if I talk about my team, my organization, we have a freeze time till 10th of January. So we have extended this sprint to from 2 weeks to 4 weeks, just that we can have it till freeze time, because majority of the team is on leave during this period. So there is really not much of the delivery that can happen. Also, the releases cannot go. So we have just extended the sprint till the end of freeze period, so that whosoever is available, whatever capacity we have into the system, we can utilize it. That's one of the scenario when we can extend the sprint, but we have a justified reason for it. Similarly, one example to quote where we can shorten the length of a sprint is where, for example, we have a release calendar defined and we have a release coming in next week, and we have our sprint ending in this week. So it's just 3-4 days left. So in that case, we can probably adjust those days within the sprint so that we can have that whatever we have developed. Sorry, I got it a little wrong. So our sprint is ending on end of this week and our release date is 2 days before. So it's ideal to just reduce the sprint length to 2 days less, so that whatever we have developed, that can be released into production. So this could be one example where the length of a sprint could be shortened. Yes, I think that's about sprint length. Ideally, in most ideal situations, we should not be changing the length of a sprint once it's decided.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are good for today, Priyanka. We have just
Okay.
covered, I think, 7-8 questions for today's session.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's good. That's quick.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so thanks, Priyanka, and hopefully we will have next session soon. You should not you should not wait for your next session.
Sure, Sunil,
When
definitely.
I say we means like I'm like one of the fan among many fans which we have now. If you go and see your comment section, there are a lot of people out there, and I'm sure like a lot of people reach out on LinkedIn as well, right, Priyanka?
Yep.
So just keep on feeding them.
Definitely. I'm happy that I'm able to add some value to the people out
Great.
there. Yes.
Great. Okay, then thanks a lot, friends, and bye, guys. See you in the next year.
Thank you, everyone, and wish you a happy new year.